Hello, my name is Troy Adu here,
I'm Tyler Hoskins.
and you're listening to our Sick Ass podcast.
Kia ora, and welcome back to another in-guest episode of the Sick As podcast. Today's guest actually happened by chance. I happened to be walking down the road, I looked into a sushi shop, did a double take, and I was just like, damn, it's Jono. So then I messaged him, and I think the first thing that I got out of that, and it was a big reminder because we went through uni together, just of how kind of chill this guy is and how easily, accessible he is to be able to have a sit-down chat with him. And we have had a bit of a chat this morning, and it's almost like we were never really apart, even though we have been apart. It's been about 4 years, maybe, since we've had our last discussion. So today, someone who is actually qualified in everything that he will be speaking about today. So that's a first in terms of being able to put good information out there, and we'll get into a little bit of that journey. But today's guest is Mr. Jono Kumar. Thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Kia ora, Troy. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's the first thing that I did speak about there in the intro was the fact that you've always been such a relaxed person when it comes to all these different things. I just remember I've never really, like, in labs and lectures and everything, like tutorials, I don't think I've ever seen you get like fully vexed about anything, right? You've always just been like, well, we'll talk about it, we'll do group stuff, and you're always just like, it's all good. Has that always been something like part of your person, or something you've developed?
I think it's definitely something that I've developed. I remember studying my first and second year, and all I could think about was, I need to get an A to get into this course. I need to improve my grades. I need to la da 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 da. And I remember my second year, my grades were probably the worst I've ever had. And so I knew I had to just change something up. And so the next year, my mum and dad taught me that if a problem arises, either you can solve it right now or save it for later. And so, with that, I stopped overthinking things. I kind of just took it as it is. If I can solve it now, I'll solve it now. If I don't, it's a problem for later.
Right.
And so I think with that, you can translate it to, life situations and life issues as well. That, bad things do happen in life. We all go through ups and downs, but it's how you react to it that is going to get you over. So there's no point in being stressed and twitchy all the time, just enjoy life as it comes, it's a journey.
And how have you found that in terms of your overall well-being?
It's been good, man. It definitely improves your mental health where you don't think things too much. You learn to take life as it is, as it comes, process it. You share experiences with other people as well because, it's just not you on this world. There's 6 billion of us. And I read this quote where everyone you meet is your superior.
Sure.
You can learn something from everyone you meet. If you have the willingness to, you're probably going to enjoy life a bit more.
Yeah.
So every time I meet someone, I learn something new that I could probably use in my life.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
And I think it makes every single encounter that you have with someone a lot more rich, because you're not looking at it as like a transaction of a social encounter. It's just like, I'm here, what can I provide for you? And then, like, by osmosis, you'll kind of take what that person's given to you for a little bit. Yeah.
Definitely, I completely agree with that.
And you're into a little bit of surfing as well. I know that, people who are a bit more in touch with, like, environments in general are just so much more aware of themselves. Have you found that surfing, or, like, firstly, why did you get into surfing, and how has that kind of evolved you as a person?
Well, I first got into it when I first met my friend Bradley, actually. I was working at Hallensteins at the time, and he lives in Tauranga, and he invited me over. We went surfing for the first time. And I think what I liked about it was that you can just be in nature. You can turn your phone off, you can chuck some music on, you can be with your best friends, and all you've got is just the board in the water. And if you fail, just get back up. And I think from there, I've just enjoyed being in nature a lot more. I think we're pretty lucky. In New Zealand especially, we were surrounded by beautiful scenery. But when do we really sit back and just appreciate it? I think a lot of people take it for granted. But, we have it pretty good here.
And the ocean is something, because I live in Lyle Bay in Wellington, we're like pretty much across the road from the beach. And when you're in the ocean, I think it puts a lot of things into perspective, because you realize you're so small. Like, compared to
100%.
everything else, the ocean is so expansive that you're just like, what am I worried about?
Yeah, 100% agree, man, because the ocean is beautiful. But as you said, you get in there, there are things bigger than there, and in the ocean that might get you, and it's a fear, but it's also a respect, and because the ocean has given us so many things that we have to respect it and look after it.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful, and I think those are all really cool things that you don't really. It's so many textbooks could tell you so many different things, but until you're actually there and doing it, like, does that ever make sense to you properly? And I think it makes you just an overall better person, just to be in any sort of nature, and to just, I mean, we've talked about firstly the respect that you have for other people, and now the respect that you have for the environment, and just kind of enjoying where you are in different spaces. I like that, man. So yeah, you talked about study for a little bit, and you talked about, so that's an interesting journey in itself. It's something that a lot of the people who come on here, they'll talk about how just pretty much university changed the way that they viewed the world.
Sure.
So you came in to do nutrition,
Indeed.
or sports nutrition. So just, what got you into that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So my first year study at uni was 2013, and like you, I came straight after high school. I remember that the last day of course confirmation, I was enrolled in forensic sciences, actually. And I did that because my mum and dad and my brother and I, we always used to watch CSI Miami, and I was like, oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
And I remember a course coordinator came and showed us some of their work, and that immediately put me off.
Yeah.
So I had to think of myself, what do I like? And I remember growing up, my parents would always enroll me in sports. Like, I played rugby, I played soccer, I played basketball, tennis, swimming, you name it. And I also really liked food. And so one of the drop-down options was sports nutrition.
Cool.
So I just said, why not? I took a leap of faith, and probably was one of the best decisions I ever did.
That's awesome,
and
man.
I really enjoyed my 4 years of study from undergrad.
Yeah.
And that's where I met you.
Yeah, it is how you met me, and we did a couple of, quite actually, I think third and fourth year, I was basically in every second paper with you.
Yeah.
And that's when I was just like, wait, what do these guys do? 'Cause
Yeah.
you kind of just came out of nowhere. You were like in none of our classes, and then you were just like in all of the sports science classes.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, cool, okay. And then that's where we did meet each other, and I guess along that journey, you kind of have an idea of what you might want to get out of it. Did that change at all during your time in the degree?
During my bachelor's, I guess my focus was I want to be a sports nutritionist. My inspiration was a lady named Catherine Black, who you may know as well. She did some work with the Chiefs rugby team and the Warriors, and when I talked to her, all I could think about was, man, I want to be like her.
Yeah.
And so that inspired me to be a sports nutritionist. Well, wanted to study towards that. And I think after I studied it, I still had a goal towards it, but with a plan. Nothing ever goes to plan. And I think you just have to just go with it and see where it transpires.
And what was your plan in terms of going forward? You actually did a little bit of research, but we'll get there shortly. What were the papers for you that you found were kind of the most fulfilling in terms of like, oh, I'm actually learning what I want to be learning?
That's a good question. You're taking me back. So one paper, I'm not too sure if they still have it now, was Hunt 355, and that was Perspectives in Sports Nutrition.
Cool.
And so it was about a class of maybe 20 people. Three of my best friends are in there, a few third year and fourth years, and the lecturers were people who inspired me and wanted to, I guess, push me further. And what I liked about the class, I guess, and what inspired me was that we learnt a multitude of sports nutrition topics. For example, we did one on racing in the Arctic. Like bobsled racing and things like that. Things you wouldn't learn about, Some of the other papers I learned was exercise physiology with Jim Cotter, who is an extremely knowledgeable person.
Absolutely.
And I learnt a lot of that, which I guess my passion grew for a lot of sports and the sciences behind it.
Yeah.
And I would say public health. Is my other biggest passion. I didn't really enjoy learning about it growing up, but I think now, reflecting back, it's such an important topic and definitely a big passion of mine now.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into a few of those reflections shortly, because that's I think that's where we have a lot of similarities in terms of our philosophies for helping different people. But then, so you graduate with... What is the overall degree that you graduate with?
Oh, man, good question. So I think for mine, it was a Bachelor of Applied Science, majoring in sports nutrition.
Yeah, and I guess for you, because you did go on to do future study, but I don't think the social media world I don't think it would have had an impact on you at the time, but if you go and look at any person who's competed in IFBB or something like that, and they're giving like nutrition programs out, apparently they're a nutritionist. Or that, what's the regulation, if there is any, around like that? Because you actually have the qualification. And then how does that actually make you feel? Not that it should be one of those things that you go like on a crusade, like what the hell? But it kind of undermines a lot of the hard work that a lot of people put into it.
100%.
Yeah. So what do you think on that?
That's a good question. So, I mean, currently the term nutritionist, or nutrition expert, it's not really a regulated name, as you said. You can be a New Zealand registered nutritionist, which is regulated, which is a protected name, but you can meet anyone, a random off the street, and they can just say you're a nutritionist.
Yeah.
There's no regulation with that, and that can cause some problems as well. Now, as you mentioned, people who are into like the bodybuilding competitions and stuff, they give out nutritional advice, and some of it may be really good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
But just because you can say something like that or give out information doesn't mean you should. With people, I guess, like with us and people who are trained in there, we've studied our whole lives to provide evidence that is going to help people. And these people may be helping others, but should they be helping?
Sure.
A lot of people, I guess, now with social media, that's where you get most of the information from. And unfortunately for people like myself, a dietitian and personal trainers and strength and conditioning professionals, well, people don't want to listen to us when they can just go on Instagram or Facebook and see whoever it is providing advice.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying there are some fantastic professionals out there who provide great advice. Who,
for sure.
I would definitely recommend. But I think a lot more education needs to come into educating people about some traps to look out for.
For sure. And you did touch that you did your masters and you did, so you went through, you did dietetics. So you are a dietitian.
I am. Yeah.
So that's the real deal, and that's kind of like, I think this is where I get the issue with a lot of people, is that they're dealing with people who have, like thyroid issues or PCOS, all those sorts of things, and they're just saying, you just need to do this. And I'm like, okay, now we're dealing with clinical things. And the reason why this touches with me is because, I did a lot of clinical exercise physiology, and a lot of my area of research is with clinical people. And, this is stuff that could potentially kill someone or do something that actually pushes someone further along in terms of the debilitating effects of exercise, or in your case eating. So firstly, why did you get into like dietetics? Because you went straight from your degree into the Masters of Dietetics.
So I graduated I think late 2016, and then I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do with my life. And I wanted to further my study, and I applied for a few programs, but I chose dietetics just because I had heard a few good things about it from previous people, and my friends were doing it as well, which was a big appeal. And I guess the reason why I wanted to study dietetics was that I knew straight away that I wanted to help people with food, and I'm really glad I chose dietetics. It taught me a lot of things.
That's cool, man.
So hopefully, for the next few years, I can still use that degree and help people.
And what was your kind of, most people have a disconnect at some point with their degrees, where they just feel like, I know I need to get this degree, but I don't know if this is a really hard grind. And what was that point for you during your time studying?
It's a good question, actually. So dietetics is a 2-year program. And so for my first year, halfway through the year, one of my really good friends dropped out. And so that was tough for me because, he was the person, who's my best friend. I always used to go to talk to him about things, just random things, music, sports, whatever. And him not being in class, I think that kind of affects you because you don't feel like you're close to anyone. And so at that point, I really considered, I was like, well, am I really doing this for me, or am I just doing it just because? But I think that taught me just to persevere, because quitting doesn't solve anything.
Not at all.
It teaches you how to be strong and to overcome things, So I'm glad I persisted with it and got a really good degree at the end of it.
Awesome. And as part of so firstly, the first thing I need to say is that it's actually competitive entry. So you can't just be anyone who wants to do a Masters of Dietetics. So well done for getting in. Well done for also completing the entire course. And part of that course, you actually have to do, so you do placements. So you're actually working with in clinical spaces, but then you got to do a little bit of research as well. So with Catherine Black, the lady that you gave a little bit of a shout out earlier,
I did.
What was that kind of looking at, and what was your role in the entire research process?
So I was very fortunate that I looked at the effects of low energy availability, which physiologically is defined as consuming less than 30 kilocalories per kilogram of body weight. And when that happens, it can lead to serious complications like metabolic disease, osteoporosis, mental function, performance, especially on the field. And we looked at the effects of that in elite female rugby players. So they were the Tokyo Olympics, the Black Ferns players.
Right.
Unfortunately, they didn't have enough funding for me to actually meet the players. But so what I did was analyse their dietary composition through an app called Meal Logger. And we also assessed their knowledge and their attitudes towards the topic. So, for example, have the players heard of the term low energy availability? If they've heard of it, who do they get the advice from?
Right.
What do they know about it? Do they know the complications associated with it? And at the end of the study, we found that in the pool of players, half of them who knew the term, had heard about it previously, consumed physiologically more.
Wow.
So they consumed more than that 30 kilocal limit, which was really good, which means they weren't at risk of developing it.
Right.
But we found over half did not know about it, and coincidentally, they were more at risk.
Right.
Which I guess highlighted the importance that education throughout, I guess, from when you're young towards when you're a professional athlete or further on, is very important.
Right. Yeah. And that's at baseline level, right? This is not taking into consideration how much training they're doing as well.
No.
And they're elite.
Yeah, they're elite. So I guess the problems with the study was, it is a small sample size. I think we only had about 30 people, but there were similar studies done by previous authors who have looked at, the effects in a recreation population. They found that over half as well were at risk, and also didn't take into account men.
Yeah.
And I think with men in sports as well, we as a society put incredible expectations on them.
Sure.
And if they don't perform well, then we ridicule them, which is unfair.
Yep.
But a lot of men as well, they go through a lot of eating disorder issues,
Yeah.
body image issues, that I think it's a stigma to not talk about, which is not the solution.
Absolutely. And especially because we're like, the Kiwi bloke is like, it's the stoic like man who can do all these manly things, whatever that is. And I mean, the term eating disorder is what would come with that in terms of someone who, is not quite regulated with how much they're consuming. And then automatically there's like the stigma around what it is to have an eating disorder.
Correct.
Yeah. So just going back to the study that you did, for those people who were finding out information on their, about like that entire aspect, where were they getting most of that from?
So good question. So a lot of them had already seen a dietitian. So as part of, I guess, the high performance system, as you progress up in terms of eliteness, each team has a dietitian. And they do their own anthropometrics, they do their body comp, they do their diet records. And correct me if I'm wrong, but from that study anyway, we found that a lot of the information they got from the dietitians themselves, their managers and their coaches, who some of them had heard, and also from their peers.
Yeah.
So we know that the easiest way to spread information is word of mouth.
Absolutely.
So more likely, if you've seen a dietitian, for example, and we're in the same team and they've told you something useful, you're probably going to help me out because we're on the same team.
Sure.
So, which was really great to see.
Yeah.
But I guess what was concerning was that half of the group didn't know about it. But we can't just say just because they didn't know about it, maybe because it was their first time being in a high performance setting,
Right.
maybe because they've never seen a dietitian before, and things like that.
Yeah. Do you think there are barriers around seeing a dietitian though, even if you are at that high performance level?
I think there are a few.
Right.
I guess with a few people, I mean, who really knows what the term dietitian means?
Exactly.
I think we kind of have to break it down saying that we're just a nutritionist with just a little bit more knowledge, I think, do people know that they have a problem with their eating, or are they self-aware that they need to get help?
Yeah.
That's another issue. With a lot of the public systems, we get referrals from the doctors as well, so people need to go mention to their doctors. And the other option is private practice, but that's for people who have money they can spend. So I guess as a dietitian, we need to make more services more accessible
Sure.
for those especially who are disadvantaged and don't have the access to that.
And that's really cool. And I think that's coming into the whole public health thing that we were talking about before. So before we get into the exact discussion that you had, you had that chance to reflect because you finished, you completed your studies, you graduated, you got the piece of paper that said, we're doing this, this is us. But then you decided, you've been in education for so long, I'm going to get out of here.
Yeah.
So tell us about that process and, why you thought it was so necessary. Where did you go and what were the biggest learnings from that entire process?
Yeah, no, that's cool. So I finished graduating, must have been May last year. And at the time I was working at the university in the nutrition department as a teaching fellow.
Yep.
At the end of my placement in November 2018, I made a promise to myself that I would travel at some point. And so I started saving up just a little bit by bit, week by week. And in February of 2019, myself and two of my friends who I convinced, we bought a one-way ticket to Glasgow on a 2-year OE. And so we moved October last year. It was probably a week tomorrow, I think, is when we first got there.
Oh, cool.
And the reason, I guess, why I took a leap of faith and just decided to do something different was because up until the end of my master's, everything was scripted for me.
Sure.
I knew where I was going to go to high school, knew where I was going to go to uni, knew what I was going to study. And for me, I read a quote that if you don't put yourself out of your comfort zone, you're not growing. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to take a leap of faith. A lot of people, when I say Glasgow, they say why. But for anyone out there listening, when you get the chance, by far the friendliest city I've ever been to in my life. They will treat you with the utmost respect and they will make you feel welcome as well. And that was good because, as you said, after 6 years, my mind was definitely worn down a lot. I kind of lost a passion for nutrition and exercise a bit because it was just drilled into me for 6 years straight, and I needed to take just a pause from it, just to reflect on some other things that I wanted to experience. And that was great. I got to experience a few different cultures, cuisines, a lot of different people. We managed to go to a few countries, but we eventually settled in Glasgow. We lived on top of a pub as well, which is very cool, and that was our local. And while I was in Glasgow, I actually worked as a pastry chef. Probably not good for a dietitian, but it was a good experience working in the kitchen. Met some awesome people. And I think I had to come back in March this year because of coronavirus, and I wasn't expecting to be back. But in that short time, I did learn a lot. In New Zealand, excuse me, I think we're protected from a lot of things.
Right.
For example, we hear things a lot about homelessness, poverty, migration, food insecurity. Yet, how often do we see it in Dunedin, for example, just in Dunedin? And it was good for me to get out to the world because everywhere I went, I saw those issues, but magnified it at even more intense level.
Right.
I'd walk down the streets in Portugal, for example, and every second street there would be 2 or 3 people lying on the street begging for money.
Wow.
Now, for someone like me, or for people who I guess are tuned to that, it makes you feel sad because we live in a world where things like that shouldn't be happening.
Right.
And I think from there, that kind of made me develop a lot more, made me reflect on my practice as a future dietitian. And I realized that I want to use my degree in a way that I help people.
That's awesome.
And so when I came back to New Zealand, I had a goal that I wanted to work as a dietitian, not for any benefit for me, but I want to help people. I think I was talking to you before. There was one example where I came back after working a long shift at night, and I decided against catching the bus because I just wanted an easy ride home. I called a taxi, and the guy started talking to me. Found out I was from New Zealand, asked me what I did. And as soon as I told him that, I'm a nutritionist, he said, you need to help me lose weight. And we ended up having a chat for about 30 minutes after he dropped me home in the car outside my block. And I was giving him tips about, you should, go see a doctor, ask him to refer, swap saturated fat for unsaturated fat, milk, things like that. And just the joy in his face, because I took a bit of time just to give him some information that is well known.
Yeah.
I think he appreciated it a lot.
Yeah.
And at that point, I realized that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to help people who don't have access, who don't know anything.
Absolutely.
Because they're the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know?
That philosophy is so, it's one of those ones that I think, I mean, I'm still young as well in the whole scheme of things, but it's one of those things that I think is the reason I kept studying, is because I had those opportunities to deal with people and just see how the most basic thing that I know to them is almost one of the most enriching things for them. Yeah. And you just see that, that light bulb moment in their head. Once that flicks, and then you see that, you're like, it's just so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And for you feel like, this is what I was put here for.
Yeah.
Did you get that moment while you were like sitting there chatting with him?
Yeah, definitely. I think just because he was just so thankful at the end of it. Thank you so much. I didn't know this. I'm going to do this. And it was funny, 3 weeks later, I went to a party and he picked us up from the flat and he recognized me.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying to my flatmates, like, boy in the back is a good boy. He helped me out with this. And I felt like I helped someone.
Yeah.
Which was good.
That's awesome, man. And that I think that is the thing that keeps a lot of people going.
Yeah.
Especially if you look at community workers, some of them, like, they definitely are so skilled that they could go anywhere else and make heaps more money.
Yeah.
But you realize it's not for the money for these people.
No,
like, they just realize they're in the position where they can do the most good.
Yeah.
Whenever they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that little bit of a sacrifice there. That's so cool. I mean, so you had to come back early. What would have been the plan? So say you were going to stay over there, would you have just continued the OE lifestyle, or do you think you would have started up some sort of practice while you were there?
It's tough to say because I did plan on being there for 2 years.
Yeah.
Before I went overseas, I didn't register as a dietitian.
Okay.
Just because I wasn't thinking about it. I just wanted to experience something new. So I guess in terms of planning, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, which in itself is a beauty because I didn't want to force anything. I just wanted something just to happen organically and just follow the path, you know. But in that path, it's led me back here.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to trust it.
Yeah.
You know?
That's nice. It's almost like the because you were saying that up until that point everything had been scripted.
Yeah.
And then if you like had scripted your non-scripted part, you're just like, I've just gone.
What's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then everything. I mean, just with COVID, that's the most unscripted thing we could have asked for. But it brought you back here.
Yeah.
And you're currently employed as a dietitian
yeah.
right now.
So I've actually just started on Monday as a clinical dietitian in Southland Hospital, and it's a very rewarding job because most of the people we see in the hospital are there for a reason. They're sick and they need help. And, a few years ago, if you asked me if I would ever work in a hospital, I would say no. Right. Because it is quite sad and it can get to you, you know, seeing people on their deathbeds. But I think the experience helped me grow because instead of thinking these people are sick, there's no help.
Yeah.
I immediately thought, I'm going to try to maximize their quality of life and give them the best support so that they make sure that they feel they're being looked after and being treated with respect and compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
And I think from there, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm doing my best to help someone.
That's so cool, man. And I think you brought up a really cool point before we were talking about this with like regards to the types of people that get through. Like, I think because of the way that we're set up, just society in general is just like those people who get really good grades are then going to then be like good people for different jobs. For some jobs, for sure. But we're in a job, we are in an industry where our currency is our relationships with different people. And how have you found as an individual, seems like someone, you're just way more empathetic to other people's feelings, thoughts, emotions, and what they actually get out of the exchange. Do you find that has actually helped you with this transition into the hospital setting?
Definitely. I think, the best thing I've learned about this, there's a quote by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yeah, boy.
Big life lesson from his mum was, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. It's literally not that difficult.
Yeah.
And from that point, every patient I see, every person I see, regardless of whether they're at a clinic or just in the person, I'm going to treat how I would treat anyone else.
Yeah.
I'm going to treat them with absolute kindness. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't be judgmental. Just have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, my patients who I've seen this week have respected that and have been more open to just talk to me about their life, which in itself is quite rewarding that they
Absolutely.
trust you. You know?
And with that, do you think, no, actually, the literature is pretty clear on it, but like just from your perspective, when you can create like a really deep relationship with someone, they tend to, like, you tend to be able to help them more because they tell you all of these different things that they didn't actually tell their GP.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, oh, so like, you're just like, okay, A and B, this isn't matching up. Like, I don't understand why this keeps happening. And then like, you just kind of open up as a person to them, and then they're like, oh, you know, I also do this as well. And you're like, there we go. There's the missing puzzle piece. And a lot of it is just getting to know people.
100%.
And yeah, I just think that you'll unroll. So if you have that kind of going in where you don't know everything, it was almost like the thing you said right at the beginning is this, that every encounter you go into, you're going to learn something from that person. Yeah. Man, that's so cool. That is so cool.
Because at the end of the day, we only know so little.
Yeah.
You know, we can learn lots. And I think even seeing patients this week, I've learned so much. You know, I don't know anything, you know, compared to a lot of people. But I think if you have a willingness just to learn from people, just to even take a 5-minute conversation out of the day and just talk to someone, I guarantee you that'll enrich your life in some way or another.
For sure. And being in that environment for you, I know that when I was working, you know, in the breast cancer clinic and all that sort of stuff, and just like how resilient these people are. Yeah. Just like, I think I have it hard sometimes, and then they come in, they're like, oh, my treatment, blah, 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 and like all these different things, and I'm just like, shit, I really have nothing to complain about. But then at the same time, it's quite heavy on you because, like, so how are you, well, I know it's very early, but how are you adjusting, and what are the types of things you're putting in place to try to keep you, like, safe?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, actually, because, you know, as you said, that being in a hospital or being anywhere around that's not nice, I guess, can have an impact on you in the way you perceive the world, that, you know, things are quite sad. And it's quite an easy frame of mind to get into. And it's quite tough to say, to think the opposite, to think, you know, we're in a situation where we're actually helping people. Yes, it is a sad situation, but we're actually trying to help. And for me, you know, I try to just smile a lot. Because if someone sees you smiling, the more chances are they're going to be like, oh, life's good. Yeah. What have you got to worry about? Right. You know? And I guess seeing patients as well, every time I see them, I always introduce myself, who I am, always give them a big smile, you know, ask them consent that I can talk to them. But I guess from outside of the workplace, things like, you know, listen to music. Love listening to music. Every day I have to listen to some music. Playing sports as well. We know exercise does wonders, not only for your health, but also your mental health and making you feel good. And also, you know, things like hanging out with your friends and conversing, you know, doing things like this where you can share experiences with people. Because at the end of the day, we all may look different, but we all have more similarities than differences. Absolutely. You know, it's just whether you have the patience to talk to someone and find out about those similarities.
And it's, I mean, that is information that, especially in the social climate that we are in right now, is almost like the thing that needs to come out of different people. Is like, we need to stop looking at very superficial things. We can't judge a person based on, I mean, the easiest one right now is, you know, skin color. And that's where a lot of the racism stuff is coming out because of what people perceive of these different people. So I think, in terms of the illness of people, like, we can't just look at them as sick people. And people who didn't help themselves. No. Like, these are still people who have stories. Yeah.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, some people get sick idiopathically, meaning it just happens spontaneously. And you can't say it was your fault. It's literally not your fault. It just happens. You know, bad things happen to good people. It's that saying, and it's cliche. It's true. Yeah. But I think to think they're unhelpable is probably the wrong way of thinking. You know, even talking to them, addressing their name, saying kia ora, saying hello, means a lot to them. Taking the effort to show that you actually care about someone. Yeah. You know, because we live in a world, as you said, that right now, a lot of issues going on, a lot of problems that we as a community, as a society, need to work together towards. And I think spreading a little bit of kindness, a bit of empathy, a bit of love will make the world a better place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that was one of my favorite quotes that was taught to me. I think it was my PE teacher, and he just said to me, you know, like, no one's going to remember what you told them, but they're going to remember how you made them feel.
Exactly. I love that quote. Yeah.
It's just those little things where, like, it doesn't matter how knowledgeable you are, but if you're not, like, a good person, no one's going to really, like, they're going to remember that you made them feel horrible, or they're going to remember that they're, like, they want to be surrounded by you more.
Yeah, exactly. exactly.
So cool. Yeah, so just beyond that, so there's something else that I need to give you props for, and it kind of changed the way that I thought about, how I should go about social media and how I could actually help a little bit more. But actually, when we were talking about this, it was almost like you were in this paradox because you wanted to provide as much content as possible. I'll let you tell the story, but anyway, you had a Instagram page with a friend of yours, and it was the Fit Foodies page, and it was honestly the first. I think you were like one of the early adopters of Instagrammers or people who had pages that actually came out to dispel myths. Like that was kind of I took that away as like that was the overall kind of gist of the page. So how did that come about? But then kind of where was the switch in your ideas around it come?
Yeah, no, good question. So yeah, I did have that page, and I did run it with my friend from dietetics, and I guess our purpose of that was we were aware that in the world, in the fitness industry, a lot of misconceptions surrounding, especially nutrition and exercise. And I guess we wanted to provide evidence that was basic, simple, and that everyone could follow, and they knew that what the information they were getting was actually correct and not just something we made up. I guess the internal conflict came at the end of my master's, actually, and I thought back to myself as a person. And I had a goal for myself that I wanted to spend less time on my phone and my social media. And I had to think, but if I want to do that, why am I posting? Why am I'm just promoting people to look at their phone. I think ever since the development of iPhones and things like that, I think it's quite easy to get trapped of going on Facebook, just scrolling, seeing what news it is, putting the phone down, repeat. But that time you spend doing that, you literally cannot get back. I'm not too sure on most of them, but on iPhones, at the end of the week, you get a reminder saying, you spent so-and-so looking at your screen. And I remember at one point, I looked at mine and it said, you spend on average 3 hours a day looking at your phone. 3 hours times 7 days, that's 21 hours a week I look at my phone, not including Netflix or YouTube or whatever. And that's time I can't get back. And at that decision, I felt that continuing the page was probably going against what I believed in. And I didn't want to compromise that. So I shut the page down just because I didn't really want to promote, I guess, the use of social media. We spend too much time on it. We genuinely really do spend too much time on it when we could be doing things like spending time with our family, learning a new language, learning the guitar, playing sports, going out in nature. And so I'm glad that I made that decision. I feel a bit more happier inside.
That's awesome.
That I did. But I also know a lot of my friends who have those pages, and they do excellent jobs at providing the most up-to-date knowledge and breaking it down simply, and props to them by doing it because they don't mislead anyone. They do what they're supposed to do. They're helping people, So I don't think me deleting the page made a big difference, in that broader scheme of things, but it's good to know there are people out there like, people I've studied with like yourself are providing the truth on things so you can educate people.
Appreciate that, man. But I think it's one of those things where when you realize that it's kind of making you feel a little bit iffy about things, everything after that point will probably go downhill anyway. So it'll probably get to a point where you would have shut it down, but not from your own accord. It's just like, this is running me into the ground because I can't deal with this. Where you got out, you like reflected early and just saw, this doesn't align with my values. I can't continue to do that. And that's where I want to take this because social media for me, being on my phone, I did the exact same thing. I saw how much time I was on my phone. And I'm way more aware now of just when I'm like mindlessly scrolling. And you almost just want to like slap yourself in the face. Like, what the hell are you doing? Put it down. But then you put it down and like it's just instinct. You don't even realize that you just like are reaching and you're like, what am I reaching for? No, it's my phone. Oh my gosh. And you just like 20 seconds, 30 seconds gone, then like an hour gone. So what have you kind of employed yourself to try be a bit more aware or even like lower that time?
That's a good question. So I guess recently anyway, when I've noticed that I'm scrolling on my phone and I've been on it for a while, I need to stop. I usually turn it off and I usually just go outside. Just go outside, just take in a few breaths of oxygen and feel calm, feel present.
Yeah.
And then, things like even like listening to music. And yeah, it is still using your phone, but just don't look at the screen. Just,
Sure.
connect it to some headphones, listen to music, take a walk, go play some sports, go read a book, do something away from the screen.
Right.
But I think it is quite hard for people, especially who are used to it, that it's like an attachment of their body.
Yeah.
Like it's part of them.
Oh, yeah.
And so just getting rid of it may cause withdrawal.
Yeah.
Like you need it. You need to check how your friends are doing. You need to check who Snapchatted you or things like that, And I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
Because it's still a work in progress for me.
Yeah.
But I think we need to prioritize what we actually want to do in our lives, Do you really want to spend most of your time in your life, which is a gift, looking at a phone?
Yeah.
Or do you actually want to enjoy it?
Yeah. I think another thing that helps as well is that because if you're into surfing, you like literally can't take it out there.
Yeah. That's if you take your phone out, well, it's gone. So which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
To be honest, but who will actually listen to that?
Yeah.
We'll
Was that a conscious decision for you to like be off your phone more, where you're just like you realized how much time it was taking away from you, and then like you employed this, or did you start to see that when you weren't around your phone as much, you like became happier with other things?
I think definitely the second thing, noticing that I wasn't without my phone, I was realizing that I wasn't worried as much. I didn't feel tired.
Right.
Because, looking at the screen hours and then your eyes just get strenuous, I just enjoyed life a lot more. Learn to just live in the present.
Yeah.
Not to think, oh, tomorrow so-and-so is going to this or whatever, Tomorrow is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right now it's just a gift.
Yeah.
And that's why they call it the present.
Man.
So
you're just so enlightened.
Not really, but I would say that I've just learned from lots of people.
Yeah.
That's who I am as a person, because other people have helped me. I wouldn't be the person I am without other people.
And it's so interesting, the people who say these sorts of things and can reflect on that sort of thing are people who have actually like been out of the bubble that they're always surrounded by, and that bubble is also created by the social media circles you keep as well, where like because you're away from it and you're not like dependent on those different things, and you've like sought perspective elsewhere, you can actually start to see that sort of thing. But when you're in the world, and I've got this with my PhD right now, where I'm so close to the different chapters I'm writing that I don't realize the garbage until I like, give it to someone else. They give me fresh eyes and I'm like, oh, okay, the problem was right there. I just never saw it because I was so like in it.
Sometimes it just takes a different perspective or for each other just to be more open-minded.
Absolutely.
And not just looking one way.
That's so cool. And speaking of looking at other ways and whatnot, are you thinking about doing a PhD in any time?
My dad asks me that all the time. I think at some point I will.
Yeah.
In terms of when, I'm not too sure. At the moment I've got a really great job with some great people, and I really want to focus on doing a great job there, getting a bit of experience. When I moved to Glasgow, I made myself a promise that I would commit to 2 years. So I still have a few months left to complete that.
Sure.
I don't know when it's going to be safe to travel, and at some point I would like to complete that goal as as something to do for me. It's like a thing I just have to do. And if I get a chance to maybe do a PhD overseas, that would be awesome. I think, compared to my master's where I looked at sports nutrition, I think I'd want to look into public health.
Cool.
I think this is what you're quite passionate about as well. I've realized that there are so many people in the world who need help. As a health professional, as a personal trainer, strength conditioning coach, whatever it is, we have a gift and we need to share with people. Because knowledge is meant to be shared. You can't put a monetary value on knowledge except to pass it on.
Yeah, and that's passing it on without expecting any monetary
exactly.
Back,
I think we were having the discussion before. I worked as a personal trainer for a bit, and I loved teaching people about exercise and the benefits of exercise and why it's so good for you. But the thing I struggled with was charging people for the information I gave. Internally, I felt so wrong asking for money. And I think that's where I'm at right now, where I just want to help people regardless of the situation. Because at the end of the day, all of us, we're on this planet to leave this world a better place than we found it.
Yep.
And I just hope more people can realize that.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think it's one of those deep things that once you gain that perspective of life, everything else kind of just feels like you have purpose in a lot of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Where like your purpose is not your bank account anymore. Your
Exactly.
purpose is, like we've been saying, how you make other people feel. Where can you take other people? Like, could you launch people into a different positive part of their lifestyle and all that sort of thing?
Exactly.
That's sick, bro. That's so cool.
No, thank you, man.
And that's where I think that's why this kind of conversation, because people don't know, we actually pretty much did a podcast before this. We've been chatting for a couple of hours now. But last thing that I just get all the guests to do is just to have a tangible takeaway, and that is, what is something that you do close to daily that you see as like a habit or a daily routine or close to a daily routine that you feel like optimizes your day?
Music.
Yeah.
As soon as I get up, I usually get up about 7 o'clock. I immediately chuck some headphones in, listen to some music, do some stretches, do some yoga, and I just feel awake. Music has a beautiful ability that it can bring so many people who are so different together. You know, if anyone's out there listening, my recommendation, the one I've been listening to at the moment, I'm not sure if you've heard him, FKJ,
Right.
French Kiwi Juice.
Right.
Beautiful music. It's a lot of saxophone, a lot of electric guitar,
Yeah.
and it just soothes you.
Yeah.
I also listen to Jack Johnson.
Yeah, sure.
You know, classic Jack Johnson, and his music is just so positive.
Yeah.
You know, so for my biggest takeaway, I would say listen to some music, listen to some good music that kind of takes your breath away, makes you think about other things.
Yeah, no, that is true. I think music has that ability to put you in different places as well. Where you like listen to a song, it could have like connotations of memories. It
Exactly.
could have like, there's so many different things that come with music. And I know there would be probably plenty of times where as soon as you said Jack Johnson, it reminded me of a friend who bought a car and there was a Jack Johnson CD in there, and we just listened to that all the time.
Yeah.
Cool, man. That was an unreal chat, and I really appreciate you coming in such last minute. But the conversations, I think, is so pertinent for people to hear, and a lot of it is, yes, we can have we can have the knowledge, we can go to uni, we can do all these different things, but I think the content of your character kind of shone in the way that you speak now. And I understand that you're still going through the journey and you're still going through the processes to try to figure out, who it is that you are going to be in this world. And I think that leaves a lot of people with something that we can all kind of go forward with. And I appreciate you coming on today, brother.
Oh,
Thank you so
for having
much.
me, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
If there's anything you want to throw out there, this is your last chance to do it, and then I'll wrap up.
I mean, throwing back, what do you do in the morning? What's your like?
What's my thing?
What's your tip for people?
Pretty much do the exact same thing.
Music.
I get up, I put my headphones in. It'll either be music or a podcast.
Yeah.
Just something where it gets my mind stimulated, make my bed, and I stretch.
Yeah.
Every single morning, without fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's become a part of me where if I don't do it, it's almost like an addiction. I'm scared of like what might happen if I don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate chatting to you, man. It's good to know that there are people like us out there who do want to see the world as a better place and doing everything that we possibly can to make that happen.
Absolutely, man. And we all have a part to play. Don't ever feel like
Indeed.
Don't ever feel like anyone out there doesn't have anything to offer, because as we've said, anyone can learn from everyone. So
Exactly, man.
appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you, man.